Social organizations in Panama proposed to the national government a 30% reduction of the basic food basket in the middle of the talks at the single dialogue table. A group of social and environmental activists stormed on Thursday the opening ceremony of the Argentine Rural Society Fair to demand access to land for small-scale food producers in Buenos Aires. Also, Sri Lankan security forces demolished the main anti-government protest camp in the capital, evicting activists in a nighttime assault that raised international concern. From the headquarters of TeleSUR English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South. I'm your anchor, Gladys Quesada, and these are the news. Social organizations in Panama proposed to the national government a 30% reduction of the basic food basket in the middle of the talks at the single dialogue table. During the negotiations taking place in the Panama in the province of Cocle, the popular organizations proposed a 30% reduction in the cost of the basic food basket and the creation of a price regulation office to oversee this implementation and a law to follow up on a national level. During Friday's meeting, it is expected that the other pending points in education, health, and the fuel will be discussed. Several feminist groups, mothers, and caregivers of people with disabilities held a wake for the remains of Luz Raquel Padilla in the Mexican town of Zapopan. At the same time, another group of demonstrators in Mexico City to demand justice for her femicide. The 35-year-old woman died on Tuesday of injuries caused by the three men and a woman who sprayed her with alcohol and set her on fire 3 days earlier in a public garden in the town of Zapopan in the state of Jalisco. Padilla had already filed a complaint against a neighbor for threats, verbal and physical aggressions. Mother of an autistic child, she was part of Yo Cuido Mexico, an organization of families with experience in the care of people with disabilities. In Mexico, an average of 10 women are murdered every day, according to official figures.
Today we are here to denounce and bring to light the murder of our colleague Luz Raquel in Zapopan, Jalisco. Luz Raquel was attacked on Saturday and murdered. She died on Monday despite having filed multiple complaints of threats, aggressions, harassment, and an attack with chlorine.
The Mexican Union of Telephone Workers, the STRM, began a national strike this Thursday after failing to reach an agreement with the company Teléfonos de México Telmex, the most important company in the country and owned by the multimillionaire Carlos Slim. For the first time in 37 years, Telmex workers go on strike to demand respect for bargaining agreements. The strike involves around 60,000 employees, including active and retired workers, who began a nationwide work stoppage until midday this Friday. Telmex informed in a brief message posted on their social networks that the continuity of the telecommunication services was guaranteed as they have a network that operates autonomously. The affiliated workers are demanding a 7.5% direct pay rise for active and retired workers. In addition, a 2.9% increase in benefits and the opening of 1,942 vacancies that the company offered 3 years ago. The second day of the National Assembly's 9th ordinary session progresses in Havana, Cuba, with a focus on the family code. The deputy's agenda includes a report by the Attorney General's office. It also includes a report of the province of Granma and the presentation of the results of the highest audit of the Ministry of Energy and Mines. Likewise, the 25th version of the Family Code Bill will be debated in order to approve the text, which will be finally submitted to a popular referendum. It was also reported that the leader of the Cuban Revolution, Raúl Castro, and the President of the Republic, Miguel Díaz-Canel, will lead the meeting this Friday. In Brazil, 18 people have reportedly been killed on Thursday during a police raid in Rio de Janeiro's largest complex of favelas. A spokesperson for the state police said on Thursday's raid had targeted a criminal group in Complexo do Alemão that stole vehicles and cargo and robbed banks, as well as invaded nearby neighborhoods. The operation began before dawn and was still underway at midday. Nearly 400 police officers were involved, including Rio's tactical police unit, backed up of 4 helicopters and 10 bulletproof vehicles. According to the authorities, there were 18 casualties today in Complexo do Alemão, 23 in Complexo da Penha in May 2022, and 29 in Jacarezinho in June 2021. In Brazil, former President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva made official his candidacy for the presidency for the October 2022 electoral process. The Brazilian Federation of Hope registered the electoral formula in which the former governor of São Paulo, Geraldo Alckmin, is the vice presidential candidate, with whom the now candidate Lula da Silva continues his tour of the territory, making known his government program. Both candidates participated in a public act called Together for Pernambuco and Brazil in the city of Recife. We'll take a short break now. Join us again after this. Welcome back to From the South. A group of social and environmental activists stormed on Thursday the opening ceremony of the Argentine Rural Society Fair, the country's largest agricultural sector event, to demand access to land for small-scale food producers in Buenos Aires. Protesters were carrying a large banner demanding access to land for small agricultural producers. The activists are part of a campaign, Without Land, There is Hunger, which brings together dozens of environmental and social organizations in the country. After being expelled from the premises, the leader of the initiative, Flavia Brofoni, denounced the concentration of land for industrial use to the detriment of its use for food production.
There are 30 million hectares of land cultivated to export soybean, corn, wheat, and sunflower to produce balanced feed for industrialized animals. Only 1 million hectares are being used to produce food for the people, legumes, fruits, and vegetables. We urgently need access to land for small family farmers who are currently renting.
And the various parallel quotes of the US dollar in Argentina jumped sharply on Thursday to new record highs, with investors highly nervous about the uncertainty surrounding the Argentine economy. The U.S. currency rose 20 pesos this Thursday in the informal market to a new high of 337 pesos per dollar. It has experienced a rise of more than 100 pesos in the last 15 days. At these values, the gap between the national quotation and the so-called blue dollar at informal markets is of 147%. Likewise, the high quotations are translated into a generalized increase in prices, fueling interannual inflation above 60%. And the U.S. Congressional Committee investigating the January 2021 assault on the Capitol said former President Donald Trump ignored the calls to stop the violence. During the Democratic Congressperson Elaine Luria explained that the Republican tycoon spent 3 hours in the White House watching the events on television and rejected the request from family members and advisors to act to stop the riots, which left 5 dead and 140 officers injured. On the other hand, the head of the special committee, Benny Thompson, said the former president recklessly opened a path of lawlessness and corruption and did nothing to stop it. While the committee cannot bring legal charges against Trump, its central mission has been to uncover the full extent of the former president's attempt to stop the transfer of power to the current head of state, Joe Biden.
Thousands more more rioters marched from the
With President Trump's support, thousands of rioters marched from the ellipse to the Capitol and joined the attack. As you will see in great detail tonight, nearly all of them advised President Trump to immediately order his supporters to leave the Capitol, to disperse, and to stop the violence. Virtually everyone told President Trump to condemn the violence in clear and unequivocal terms. And on Capitol Hill and across the country, they asked President Trump to help, and he chose not to do what all those people asked him to.
Now we move on to other topics. The presidency of Turkey announced that the delegations of Russia, Ukraine, and the UN have officialized by means of an agreement the regularization of grain supplies through Ukrainian Black Sea ports. According to a statement issued by Ankara, the signing ceremony will be attended by the Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan and the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres. The agreement was made official after the military delegations of Russia, Ukraine, and Turkey held a meeting on 13th July in Istanbul in order to provide for a route out of a supply of grain and throughout Ukrainian ports. The Russian Commission prepared a comprehensive package of measures aimed at facilitating and easing the export of foodstuffs by sea, while the UN warned that there is a threat of a food crisis due to grain shortages. And we have more news coming up after a final short break, so stay with us. Welcome back. On Friday, Sri Lankan security forces demolished the main anti-government protest camp in the capital, evicting activists in a nighttime assault that raised international concern. Troops and police special task force commanders wielding batons and armed with automatic assault rifles swooped in on protesters, blocking the presidential secretariat. Hundreds of soldiers removed the demonstrators' barricades outside the premises, while the last remaining protesters were evicted. The operation came hours before the country's new president, Ranil Wickremesinghe, swore in a new prime minister to try to manage the financial crisis that has crippled the economy and triggered months of protests. Wickremesinghe himself was elected by legislators on Wednesday to replace Gotabaya Rajapaksa, who fled to Singapore and resigned after demonstrators chased him from his palace. In an exclusive interview with the global news agency AFP, Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko reaffirmed the conflict in Ukraine must end to avoid a larger-scale disaster with nuclear weapons.
Let us stop. We must not go any further. Any further is the abyss. Any further is nuclear war. It must not go that far.
Meanwhile, the Belarusian head of state also said that Ukraine must sit down at the negotiation table, and it is up to Kiev and the West to guarantee Kremlin's security demands.
Ukraine must sit down at the negotiating table and agree that it will never threaten Russia and that it will not have weapons on its territory that could threaten Russian territory. That is the main thing, and denazification and other matters are philosophical points. The main thing is the security of Russia.
North Korea has warned that the United States and South Korea will face unprecedented security challenges if they don't stop their hostile military pressure campaign against the North, including joint military drills. North Korea views any regular U.S.-South Korean military training as an invasion rehearsal, even though the allies have said they have no intention of attacking the North. The latest warning came as Washington and Seoul prepare to expand their upcoming summertime training following the North run of missiles tests this year. Ko Cho-jin, Deputy Director General of the Institute of Disarmament and Peace, said that Washington and Seoul's joint military drills this year are driving the North Korean peninsula to the brink of war. He accused the U.S. and the South Korean officials of plotting to discuss the deployment of U.S. nuclear strategic assets during another joint drill set to begin next month.
What is worthy of notice is the fact that the U.S. and South Korea are attempting to conduct a joint military exercise targeting our republic from August 22nd. And according to a report, the Defense Minister of South Korea is to discuss a detailed action plan for expansion of joint military exercise in scale and scope, and deployment of U.S. strategic nuclear assets on the Korean Peninsula. During his visit to the U.S. and its allies are increasing their military pressure on our republic. All this is raising a serious concern that the ravages of the war 72 years ago could be repeated on this land.
In Kenya's drought-stricken north, the people of Purapul are edging closer to starvation, surviving on nothing but wild berries as their children are giving it up to hunger. The mothers know the bitter fruits make their children sick, but it hasn't rained properly in 3 years, and there is simply nothing else to eat in the region of over 4 million people. Nearly 950,000 children under 5 years and 134,000 pregnant and breastfeeding women in Kenya's remote arid regions are acutely malnourished and need aid, according to the government figures from June. The World Bank forecast in June that the drought, coupled with economic disruption from the conflict in Ukraine, will drag on Kenya's recovery from the coronavirus pandemic. The Syrian Defense Ministry confirmed that an Israeli attack killed 3 Syrian soldiers and injured 7 others near Damascus. The country news agency Zana confirmed the air defense forces had intercepted missiles that were launched from the Israeli-occupied Golan Heights. The Defense Ministry stated that the raids hit an Air Force intelligence facility, a high-ranking officer's office, and a car near the Mezeh military airport. During the attack, an additional 3 foreign nationals were killed, bringing the total number of dead to 6. Israel has carried out hundreds of air raids against its neighbors since the conflict broke out in Syria in 2011 on government troops as well as allied Iran-backed forces. Also, Draupadi Murmu is elected India's 15th president, the second woman to hold the country's highest office. Draupadi Murmu, from the marginalized Chantal tribe, won the backing of more than half of the MPs, according to partial results released by the Election Commission. At 64, Murmu becomes the first female president hailing from a tribal background, and India's second female president after Pratibha Patil, who held the post for 5 years, starting in 2007. Born in Majurabanj district in the eastern of the state, Odisha, the president-elect began her career as a school teacher before joining politics. She held ministerial positions in the state government and was governor of the neighboring state of Jharkhand. But the post is largely ceremonial, and her election is not expected to make a practical difference to the tribal community, which has long been relegated to the margins of society. Now we move on to other topics. Spain's Ministry of Health stated that more than 1,000 people died in this year's second heat wave, as temperatures topped 40 degrees Celsius in many parts of the country over the past 10 days. These heat-related fatalities were recorded from July 10th to 19th, according to data collected by the Monitorization of Daily Mortality. The extreme heat affected mainly the elderly. More than 600 of the victims were aged 85 or over, 241 between 75 and 84, and 88 were aged between 65 and 74. Bea Varela, spokesperson for the Spanish Meteorological Agency, said mortality was higher among people with respiratory and cardiovascular diseases. According to the Carlos III Health Institute, the problem lies mainly in the body's temperature regulation mechanism, which is not fully developed among young people, but often overreacts among the elderly. TeleSUR English continues to grow. Its signal now reaches Europe. You can order it from your cable dealer or tune it yourself. These parameters that you see on screen are in place since July the 1st. Quite soon, further changes will be implemented for the signals in the Middle East and Africa. Now, more than ever, the world connects to us, and our stories are heard in other farther away nations. This news multi-platform will continue providing truthful content to oppose the hegemonic media's narrative and our faithfulness to our audience. And we have come to the end of this news brief. But remember, you can find this and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also, if you feel so inclined, please join us on social media for all the latest news. We are on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Telegram. For TeleSUR English, I'm Gladys Quesada. Thank you for watching.